Hi guys, and welcome back to Crafty Quilting Designs. I hope you're well and having a really great day. So guys, it's another time for me to upload a quilting tutorial for you, and this week we are going to be making a scrappy diamonds quilt. And I know you saw the name of the thumbnail and that's why you clicked on it, because you're rather interested to find out what it's all about. Well, before we get into that video, what I want to tell you is don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell and give the video a thumbs up. And I also wanted to give you some further information. Now, for those of you who have been watching myself and my husband travel around Australia, because as you know, I am doing a camping quilting series while we travel around Australia, and the series is all about using scrap fabrics. Okay, and so we are on scrap fabric number 4, I think, for all of the quilts. So for those of you who are interested in our travels, we have started a new channel, and that channel is called Carl and Karen Australian Adventures. So I'm going to put a link up there for you so that you can check it out and see all the fun things that we actually get involved in. Well, I am the fun one, he's a serious one, really. Don't tell him I said that, okay? It's our secret. Okay, so today we are going to make a scrappy diamonds quilt, as I said. So let me take you through what I did. It's a really fun project. The only thing is though, you don't need a special ruler to do this, okay? You are going to be using your ordinary ruler to make the block. Another thing also is that we will be making a piece border, and this piece border is a paper piecing border. All right, and I use ordinary photocopy paper. No special papers required, just ordinary special photo paper that you use for your printers. Okay, so no need to rush out and buy any fancy paper. We're just going to use what we have, and all about this series is basically just using the things that you have to create your quilts. I'm not going to be asking you to go and buy special rulers, special papers, special fabrics. We're just going to be using the things that we have. You know, we're going to be economizing and just using things that's really in our stock cupboard, our stock drawer, or wherever you keep all of your scrap fabrics, to make something really useful. All right, so come with me and let's go have some fun and check out this new quilt. Okay, so I have my 6 inches of strips here, and what I have done is use 3 colors altogether. So I have some white at the top, I have some brown in the middle with some spots, and I have some purple. Okay, now it is cut into 6 inches strip. Okay, now I'm going to do a 6 inches square, so I'm going to cut 1 2 3 4 5 6 and cut. So I am working with different colored layers. You can do the same. Now my ruler is a 6-inch ruler, so I know already where my other mark is. I don't have to count, but because of habit, 1 2 3 4 5 6, I like to ensure that I have the right amount, and I'm going to cut. Now I can see I can get one more just at the end there because it's quite thin, so I'm going to go for it and make one more. Okay, now that is now scraps. I'm going to work with one at the moment, so I'm going to put it right back into the center and make sure that my square is lined up properly on the grid lines on the mat. All right, now I need a pen or some kind of marking tool. Now what I'm going to do is to mark 1 inch from the edge of my fabric, so I can clearly see on my board that that's there, and I'm going to put a dot. Okay, and I'm going to do the other side 1 inch again, and I'm going to measure from the middle. Right, now to find the middle of your fabric, you can do 2 things. 1 2 3, that's my middle there, or I can take the top fabric off, fold it in half, crease it, and I can clearly see that that's my middle because I have a crease mark there. All right, so you have 2 options to find the middle of your fabric, and you're only required to do this for the top fabric. Now what I'm going to do now for my third pinpoint of where I'm going to place my ruler is to measure 1 inch down. Now I can clearly see that on my grid lines here, but I can also use my ruler, and I'm going to get a smaller ruler for this, put it right down on the middle, and I can clearly see the 1 inch mark there and put a dot there. Okay, now I am not using an erasable pen. It's just an ordinary pen. Okay, now I'm not marking the fabric so that it leaves a permanent feature. It's so tiny my eyes can see it. Obviously yours won't be able to. Now all I'm going to do now is to take my ruler and line up that 1 inch at the bottom and center it at the one to the top there. So I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so again, so it's at an angle. So all I'm making sure to do is to line up that point and that point there. So the middle point and the 1 inch across. Okay, if you want, you can draw a line. You don't really have to. I've just put a very light line, and even though I'm marking on the fabric, this is the back of the fabric, so no one's going to see that. And I'm going to do my first cut. And remember, I'm cutting 3 layers here. You can do as much layers as you possibly want. I am now going to move that out of the way. Do not leave it there and cut the other side, otherwise you will cut into it. And I'm going to turn the ruler, again marking on that same dot line. Now because I have cut, I'm now cut into that dot and I cannot necessarily see it. However, I know very well that my inch down is right there. I can see it on the mat. Okay, and I'm going to line up the ruler from the point at the bottom there where I have marked across my inch and that point up there. So let me just bring the camera closer so you can have a look. So you see that one mark there, and I can see my other point of interest where I need to align my ruler there. And all I'm simply going to do now is make my cut there. So carefully make sure it's on the dots and cut. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is to bring back in what I originally moved, and what I'm going to do also is to take one from the top, remove the lines, and I have my first triangle. Now because I am making others, I'm going to do another demonstration again with the same amount of fabrics because I've already cut these. I'm going to line it up again. I already have my center line, so I'm going to measure 1 inch down. I don't need to use the ruler because I can see where the grid line falls in the middle there, and I have my other mark there, my 1 inch across from the end and my other 1 inch across from the end. And I'm going to line it up yet again and simply cut, put it to the side because we don't want to cut into that again, and do the same thing on this end. Line it up and cut through. Okay, now what I'm going to do is bring all of this together now. So I'm going to put that on top, and this one on top. So ideally I should have my colors already placed. So this is going to be my first triangle here, so with the brown in the middle, or I can have the brown and the purple together. Let me just zoom back out so you can see what I'm doing. So the brown and the purple there. I could have the purple as the background fabric, and the white in the middle. Okay, so I have literally my three colors, my three original colors, all mixed up already. So that one's there. I have the middle one here, and I have this one here. Right, so hopefully you can see that. I'll bring it closer. Okay, so that's what we're aiming at. So you can see different colors there throughout. What I am going to do now is to find basically the same colors, because I want to make two of these together. So I'm going to get that ready and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so what we need to do is to get the same colors now and line it up together. So the white goes with the white, and the brown, and this is the way you actually create your triangle. I'm just trying to find it. There. And this one goes over there. Get your purple, and make sure you iron your fabric so you don't have those pleats there. I'm just going to get that iron and flatten that down. Okay, much better. Okay, and the same for this one. Just got a little bit of press on it as well, and just open that up. And this one goes in the middle there. So these are your blocks. Quite easy to make, quite simplistic. I hope I haven't complicated it, but I don't think I have really. And we're just going to sew them together. All right, so those are your diamond blocks. Now remember, you can use other colors if you want. So for example, if I were to add this to it, just to show you how, if you were to use very similar colors to make the you wouldn't really see it standing out there. It's going to be lost. Hence the reason why I said you need to use high contrast of fabric, so you can actually see that in the middle there. You can actually see that diamond, so that's important. Okay, it disappears, it loses itself in the background because of the white there. So remember to use different contrasting colors of fabric. Let me show you another one. So for this one, okay, we have a small print and a larger print, but the larger print still stands out. All right, it doesn't get lost. You can still see that diamond. All right, so what I'm going to do now is show you how to sew it together, and then I'm going to show you how to trim the blocks. Okay guys, what I have done is put all of the starter pieces in front of me so I can take them as I'm ready. So for example, I'm going to lift this over, line it up, and continue to sew. I only have one on top there already, and I've lined it up, so I'm just going to continue. Okay, this one as well, pick it up, line it up to the tip there, put it down, and I'm chain piecing so that it goes by very quickly. Just hold it down to the end. Okay, I'm going to come off and then do complete the other side. I'll just snip that off. So what I'm going to do now is remove the pin, finger press. So that is what you should have at the back. Okay. And I'm going to get the first color back, put it like that, so you can see already it's making back its original shape. Line it up over, and what we want is to be mindful that that tip will extend there, so that's normal as long as you have your edges together there. All right, okay, so line it up and just continue to sew. Don't worry about that, we will remove that at the end. You do the same for the other one. Again, finger press. Now, I wouldn't finger press with the white going on the white side because we don't want that to be visible. So finger press with it onto the brown side. Okay, so it stays flat. All right, same applies now. I'm going to get my white one, which is on top here, and I'm going to flip it over just like so. Line it up at the end, making sure you have your tip at the end. You don't want it like that, otherwise this piece is not going to be connected, and when you have to cut, it is going to be a smaller triangle. So line up the end first, and then you continue to sew. All right, again back on there. Okay, now obviously you need to make two. Okay, so you need to make two so that we can join. So I'm going to make the other one and I'll come back and show you what to do next. Alright guys, so I have now finished making the part of the block. Okay, now what I wanted to point out to you is about trimming them up. Okay, so I have all of these that I just made, and I've given them a little press just to keep them nice and flat, and I have pressed the seams down at the back really nicely. As I said, not to worry about that, we're going to cut that off when the times come for trimming. All right, but we're going to work with trimming up the edges here. Now, as you can see, it is not even, and you can see there's a dog ear sticking out there. You may find sometimes that even though how great you are at lining up the edges, you still find that you have a little edge sticking out. Now, our measurement guide here is the actual triangle, okay, the bottom of the triangle. So what I'm going to do is line up my ruler on the edge of the triangle, and I'm just going to make the two ends of the background fabric even with the triangle. Bring that back. Okay, and that's simply it when it comes to making sure the block is even at the bottom. We're going to do the top at a later date once we've actually completed sewing together. So again, you are lining up the edge here and cutting. I'm just going to turn it in the direction that I can cut it. So the edge of the triangle, just making sure it's even and cut. Right, so that's another one done, and you do that for all of them. So this is the stages that I have done it. Okay, so I have cut the block from the squares, sew them together, iron them, press them down so they're lovely and flat at the back. Okay, and then I bring them back to the board and trim the edges off, make sure it's nice and even and ready to be sewn together. Even if I think it is still accurate, I will take the ruler and measure just to be on the same on the safe side, so that it's nice and even. Now when you press in, make sure you open up. So if you come closer, you can see where it's sort of overlapped then. If I pull it, you can actually see it where it's opening up there. So when I go back to iron, I will literally open that up again just to make sure it's lovely and flat. And I think I will do it now, because sometimes when you cut it in that state, it stays like that. So I'm just going to put it back on there and really open up that seam and get it lovely and flat. Okay. Now you may think, well, why did I fuss about that? And I'll explain that in a second. And that's really important when it comes to lining up the edges. So what we're going to do now is take same color and put them together like so, so that we can now sew it together. All right, so it's front sides together. And so now the reason why I went back and opened that up, that seam, is because I want to make sure that these nest really nicely there. So when I sew it together, I know that it's going to make a perfect triangle for me, or a perfect diamond in this case. Now, if you wanted to use different colors, so for example, if you say, you know what, I would like to change, you could possibly use these two together if you wish. It will still make a diamond, but you'll obviously have a different color diamond. Okay, it's entirely down to you. Or you can go with the white there. Okay, and this is why it's so important to work with high, mediums and low contrasting colors and textures within the actual print. Now going back to this one, you can see there why it's so important, because that diamond really stands out. Okay, you want your eyes to literally find the diamonds. If you don't want your eyes to find the diamonds, well, in a sense, you are wasting your time in cutting the diamonds out, because it's effortless. No one will notice the diamond cut. So make sure the fabrics are contrasting well. But I am going to stick to what I originally planned them to be. So these are going to be sewn together, and these are going to be sewn together. All right, so clearly you can see the diamonds really popping out, and that's what you want. Okay, so again, front sides together, line them up edge to edge. Now be mindful that even if these background fabric here does not meet, don't worry about that, because remember, this is the unfinished size. We haven't trimmed this block yet to what we want it to be before we stitch it together. So even if the background fabric here on the edge is uneven, and let me see if I can find one and show it to you. This is a perfect example. If you look there very closely, you can see where it's not even there. Okay, it didn't line up. That doesn't bother me, because I know I have room on this block to trim it up, and none of the blocks have been trimmed as yet. All right, so that's important. What's really important is lining up the points that make the diamond. All right, hence the reason why we've ironed them, and we're going to nest the seams so that they sit right together in that nest and sew. Okay, so let's go over to the sewing machine and get that done. Right, once the blocks have been stitched, we need to give them a good iron. Make sure it's really flat on both sides. Okay, now what we need to do now is to trim the blocks down. Now before I move on to trimming, there's something I wanted to share with you before I go any further. Just put that to the side, and I'm going to bring back the original blocks or the square in which we started with. Now when I made my first cut of the triangle, I made a template, and this allowed me to do the cuts a lot more quickly, because literally what I had to do then is simply take the triangle and center it on the cutting mat with the fabric. Okay, and the same applied here. All I did, I'm just going to try and remove the rest so that you can see clearly. All I did literally is line it up on the grid line, so 1 2 3 4 5 6, cut it to square, so 6 across and 6 down, and I took my template and put it on the inch inward and the inch inward there, and I simply just then put it there, cut, and did the next side, cut. What it did was just simply stopped me from having to always measure the 1 inch down and find that inch inward from the both ends of the edge of the square. All right, so then I was able to just stack my fabric and to simply line them all up carefully, put this down where I wanted it to be, okay, and then simply just cut the fabric. So in that case I was just cutting. The only thing you need to be mindful of is that you are not trimming the template. So after every second or third cut I would measure the template just to make sure, but you would know when you've cut it, because you would know that it is taken out of shape. So for example, one side will be shorter than the other. All right, but that's just a quicker way of cutting it down into the triangles to make the diamond. All right, just as a little tip, that's what I did, and I didn't have any problems, and my triangle is still intact. All right, now going back to this now, once you've sewn the blocks together, you get 5 by 11, so 5 across and 11 down. We need now to square this up by 5 across and 10 down. Okay, so what I have done is to turn my block, and I've put it on the grid lines here, and I'm just going to trim up my edges at the top just to make sure it's a clean cut for 5 inches. I'm putting it on the grid line, one of the grid lines here, and I'm putting my ruler down, lining it up on the grid line, and cut right across. Okay, so I know that's straight. Now I am going to, because it's 11 down, I am going to take off 1/2 inch from both ends. All right, so 1/2 inch there, move that. I'm going to turn it upside down, line it up on the edge there to make sure I'm straight, and I'm going to count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 and cut. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is to then line up and check that my sides here are lovely and straight, and I can see I need to straighten it up. So I'm going to put my ruler down and simply just go to the end using the grid lines at the top and the bottom just to make sure that cut is nice and straight. Go on the other side. You can turn the fabric in this case if you haven't got a mat to turn. Line up the straight edge now on the grid lines on the left, and then I'll do the same on this side. Okay, and that's the block nicely squared up. So that's it. So continue with all of that just to make sure that you are happy. So remember, it's 5 across and 10 down, and the block before it's cut comes up to 5 across and 11. So I've just taken off 1/2 inch from each side. Okay, do not take off the whole inch on one side, otherwise you will find that your triangles, sorry, your diamonds in this case, will not sit directly in the middle of the block, as you can see here. They sit directly in the middle because the blocks are the same. Okay, so once you've done that, then it's time literally to color play and how you want to lay out the blocks. So I'm going to cut and then I'll come back and show you about laying these out. So I've laid out all the blocks out now, and I've laid them out in color patterns of 2. So when I say that, I mean I'm thinking about I've laid out the blocks in sets of 2 because I'm thinking of them as a group together. All right, the blocks have come together really nicely. I love them. It's beautiful. It's very much popping. All of the colors work. All of the textures of the prints work. Some of them I will have to move looking at them now. So for example, the way how I've chosen to lay the blocks out is with print and color. So for example, this is a print here and it's next to a solid. So these are grouped together. These 2 are grouped together. These 2 are grouped together. Sorry, these 2 are grouped together. My apologies. Okay. Now, that's the way I've done it all. Now, it works in some of the areas. Some of the blocks need to be moved about. So, for example, I have this one together, very close to this one, very close to that one, and also to that one, even on this corner here. Okay, one of my favorite blocks is this one here, and I've only made one. I love it. I think the color just works fantastically. The colors pop, as I said, and with the background colors as well with the print, it works together very nicely. Now initially I was going to add sashings and cornerstones to it, but I felt that that will break up the blocks, and I think it doesn't give it the true essence of a scrappy quilt. Okay, now remember, I'm referring to the blocks as a 2 because I'm going to sew them together as this is one block. Okay, total blocks laid out here is 30. You can go bigger, but unfortunately, because I am quilting in my caravan or sewing in my caravan, my space is limited. Had I been in my sewing room, I would have definitely gone a lot bigger and make a really beautiful large quilt with all of my scraps. I'm absolutely loving this. One of the reasons I love it is because a lot of the colors really stands out. They draw your eyes to the diamonds themselves. Okay, the fabrics are not clashing at all. There is no fighting going along. Okay, even though with some of them I think, and I could be wrong in terms of my placement. So for example, this one here, I think it doesn't work together, and I'll tell you why. Number one, I stitched this incorrectly. I made a mistake and picked up the wrong end there. Okay, now let me show you the other side of that. Is this one here, and you can see that where I've made the mistake. Now I am going to unpick that because I don't want to leave it, because I feel that you can spot it. I can see it. I don't know if you'd notice it, but I have noticed it, and I don't like what I see. I want to correct it. Okay, you could leave it if you've made a mistake, but I'm not going to. Okay, so what I am going to do now is to sew it together as it is. I will play along a little bit more, and as I said, change that, move these from being so close together, and really try and balance out the color formation throughout the quilt top before I sew it together. All right. Alright guys, so to do the paper piecing, I'm just going to use an A4 sheet of printing paper, which I think for me is going to work. One of the reasons why I've chosen to do this is because of the intention that I'm going to use the border in. Okay, now I know that there are a lot of different techniques out there in terms of paper piecing, but I'm going to use this because what I'm going to do is literally cut it in half. Okay, and then I'd have longer pieces to join the papers together. Now I have done a few already, and I'm going to show them to you once I've completed this one. So all I'm simply going to do is take my piece of scrap fabric, lay them down, and then put them front sides together. Now you can do it in any direction that you wish. You can do it lengthways, crossways, triangular, it doesn't really matter, as long as you cover the paper and the raw edge of the fabric is not showing. All right, so you will need your scraps next to you along with your scissors, so that it's easier and you don't have to move. And when you come to a point, you cut basically and sew again. That's the idea of it. All right, so I'm just going to cut that bit off there, so I have this longer piece here. And then you can add excuse me, whatever piece you want to add on. I've got this thin strip here which I quite like. I'm going to add that on in there also. In fact, no, I'm going to leave that for something else. I'm going to add on another shade of purple, but I would say try not to extend it too much over there, because obviously we are going to trim that off, so just be mindful of that. Really, you just don't want to waste the fabric, so just don't go over too much, because that is going to be waste once you complete it. And you just completely sew all the way all over the paper. You don't have to be worried about doing a 1/4-inch seam. It doesn't really matter, because all you're doing in this case is sewing the fabric on the paper, so you're not really concerned about giving yourself a 1/4-inch seam. All right, I'm gonna go with blue now, and as I said, you can go in any direction you so fit. Doesn't really matter at all. In fact, I'm going to change that, and as you can see, I'm changing my mind as to what piece of fabric I use. And you just continue to sew, and that's it. So after pressing, you're going to trim the fabric off to the size of the paper and line it up right to the edge of the paper and cut. And just keep turning until you complete it all. try not to cut the paper. You don't want to lose the size. Okay, so that is what we've created. Now I have a few more here. I just wanted to just go through the diagrams or the patterns that I have done on each of them, so you can, you know, twist it up as much as you like. I start in the corner, overlap each other, and then I did some straight ones here. This one horizontal. Okay, this one I did it on start the corner and work the way all the way through, and this one again was all mixed up, and this one here is what you've seen already. That's the one we just did together. Okay, so because I know for a fact that this is an A4 sheet and this measures, let's measure it just to be on the safe side. I think it's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm going to cut that literally in half. I'm going to do that with all of them, and then I'm simply going to then cut it. Once I cut it, then I'm literally going to take off the paper for each of them, and then I'm going to join the fabrics together. So I'm just going to do that this way. I have a 6-inch ruler here in width, so I'm just going to line it up on the 4, and then obviously I'm going to cut it in half because I know my width of my scrap paper piecing here is 8 inches in width. Okay, so what's going to happen now, I'll just do another one as an example. I'll just go with anyone really, it doesn't really matter. So this is my border. So my border now is going to be 4 inches. So I'm going to have 2 border. So I'm going to have a 2.5 inch, and I'm going to have the 4 inches as the final border. So again, line up the edge of the fabric on the line with the ruler, and I'm simply going to cut it in half. Okay, and simply what I'm going to do is just sew them all together now, and I'm going to mix it up. Obviously I'm just going to zoom back out so you can see what I'm doing more easily. That's better. So I'm going to line them up. Either way, I'll try not to put the same sort of colors together. So for example, I wouldn't want to do that because I find that's quite close, or I could go from this end. Either way, and then just sew it together. So that's the whole idea of the scrappy border. Alright, so I'm going to continue with that, and literally all you need to do is to put it apart to remove the paper, and it comes off quite easily. Now if you want, you could just spray it with a little bit of water and take it off, but it's entirely down to you. Okay, I use the A4 because it's big, and it's not going to be much paper to tear off at the end of the sewing process, so it's up to you. Alright, so it comes off quite easily, and just keep going. Okay, so I'm going to continue cutting, and then I'm going to show you the completed product. That is the best one. Absolutely love that. Very, very pretty. Alrighty guys, so the quilt is completed now. It looks absolutely beautiful, really gorgeous. All of the colors really go together. The scrappiness of the quilt, of the blocks, everything works together nicely. The contrasting colors works very well. The process itself didn't take long. Beautiful quilt. Obviously I will cook this at another date, but absolutely gorgeous. So this scrappy quilter's best friend diamonds quilt is finally completed. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. give the video a thumbs up, share the channel, and please don't forget to check us out on our next channel, Carl and Karen Australian Adventures, and see all the fun things we get up to while we are traveling in Australia. And while I'm here, I've got a little birdie that keeps listening to everything I'm saying. I'm just going to come down very closely and just show you. He's been hanging around for ages now. But this quilt is really beautiful. Now remember, the borders were paper piecing, and you can use this technique at any time throughout the quilt, even if you wanted to use paper piecing for the actual diamonds themselves. So do enjoy, have fun, like and subscribe, hit that notification bell. Love you guys. See you in the next one.